Watching atheists wake up to reality is like watching a newborn baby open his eyes for the first time. The light is painful when all you've ever known is darkness inside a protective womb that shields you from the outside world. But after a brief, painful transition, your eyes will eventually adjust. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is on an amazing journey. I read her books, The Caged Virgin and Infidel, many years ago. Following her apostasy from Islam, Ayaan has been closely associated with all of the main figures among the new atheists, but she's been going through some changes recently. If you listen to her, you'll hear her saying things like, God-given.
I think power is a given. It's like the law of gravity, and there's also powerlessness, and none of us want to be powerless. But there is God-given natural power.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali has God-given power. It helped her escape Islam, and now it's helping her escape the new atheism. This clip is from a recent panel discussion with Jordan Peterson, Oz Guinness, John Anderson, and of course Ayaan Hirsi Ali. They're discussing the significance of stories, big stories, stories about our place in the world. I watched it after Ruslan posted some of what Ayaan said. Ayaan is going through a transition that I've been seeing over and over and over again. People who, just a decade or so ago, were extremely hostile to Christianity or religion in general are starting to warm up to some very religious concepts. Suddenly, they start talking about the transcendent, something beyond ourselves.
And it's very arrogant to assume that you can change human beings to fit into all sorts of modules. Therefore, you accept that there is a power transcendent above us.
A power transcendent above us?
A power transcendent above us.
That doesn't sound like atheism. So, where are you getting this transcendent whatever above us?
And that idea that there is something above us, a higher power, I think that is rooted in Christianity, it's rooted in the Judeo-Christian traditions.
You're getting this transcendent higher power from Christianity? Why would anyone go with something from Christianity instead of atheism?
And in many ways, it is superior to the nihilistic Nietzsche type atheistic theology that human beings can do, and they can create everything, and they can manipulate.
Wait, the Judeo-Christian concept of God is superior in many ways to atheism? Now, she specifically refers to a Nietzsche-type atheism where once you reject Christianity, you give up Christian morality, and therefore you need to replace Christian morality with something else. But here Nietzsche was just being way more realistic and commonsensical than lots of other atheists. German philosophers were better at understanding the implications of rejecting Christianity than British philosophers were. German philosophers said, if we're getting rid of God and Christianity, then everything that's been built upon a foundation of God and Christianity is about to come tumbling to the ground. So, we need a new morality with a new foundation. A few decades later, World War II. British philosophers, by contrast, said, we don't need God and Christianity to have our moral views. Look at us atheists. See how moral we are. We're walking proof that people don't need God and Christianity. What these super smart atheists weren't smart enough to grasp was that they were all raised in places that taught them Christian values. They didn't come up with anything on their own. They absorbed their values from their culture. And their morality was like a rose that had been cut. Yes, it may be beautiful, but the beauty is going to fade because a cut rose dies. So I don't see how Ayaan's claim about the Christian concept of God being superior to a Nietzsche-type atheism wouldn't be true about atheism in general. But she says that the Judeo-Christian concept of the transcendent is also superior to something else.
And it's also superior, I would say, to the faith that I grew up in, with a God and a theology and a story that gives individuals a sort of one-dimensional purpose. Go and do this, make everyone a Muslim, and if they refuse, kill them, and then the day of judgment will come and life will be over. That's a simple story, but it's an abiding story. It's been around for 1400 years.
Better than Islam. To be fair, pretty much anything is better than Islam, isn't it?
The Judeo-Christian tradition, that it is not up to the human being to do that, but all we can do is civilize and continue to civilize and question and check power. Power that is checked, that is the power that guarantees most people real freedom.
The Judeo-Christian tradition is what guarantees real freedom. Does this sound like the atheists from 10 years ago? Jordan Peterson goes on to ask about Ayaan's journey from Islam.
So you, early in your life, relatively early in your life, you moved away from a totalizing religious view of the world.
Islam.
I don't exactly know into what you then moved, whether that was a secular humanism, but what I'm hearing from you now, and I believe this is also the case with your husband, is that you have come to a new understanding of the existence of the transcendent per se, and also of your relationship with it.
She moved away from the Islamic view of the transcendent to a rejection of the transcendent, to a new understanding of the transcendent.
So I rebelled against a transcendent, a concept of God, of a God that now manifests itself in, the Iranian regime, Hamas, ISIS. That was the God I grew up with. That was the story that I grew up with. I rebelled against that.
She rebelled specifically against the Islamic concept of the transcendent.
And then when I was bold enough to say, and this was in the Netherlands, I don't want any of that. I didn't convert to Christianity. I didn't convert to another religion or another God.
Pay attention, because this is true of many ex-Muslims. Once they've witnessed the horrors of the God of Muhammad, they don't want another God.
I carried with me this idea, the three-letter word of God stands just for evil.
They move away from Islam, but when they hear the word God, all they think of is evil.
And my best friends became Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins. These are people I still love and adore.
We all love and adore these guys. They performed one of the greatest social experiments in history. What happens if you start to remove Christianity from Western civilization? Their theory was that if you remove Christianity, you get an atheist utopia where science and reason reign supreme. How's that experiment working out for everyone?
And I think over time, I'm now 53, and so when I was in this state of rebellion, it started for me when I was 32 years old. Over time, I've come to realize, and I wish Christopher was alive today to comment on what we're going through.
I wish Christopher Hitchens were here to see this too. I would love to hear his thoughts on the catastrophic failure of everything the new atheists promised. But what did Ayaan come to realize?
We were actually having a conversation about, in my view, the wrong conversation. Does God exist? It was the world built in 6 days. Do we believe in fairy tales? And that was the wrong conversation to have.
So, a conversation about whether various claims are true or false, this is the wrong conversation. What's the right conversation?
The right conversation to have, as I said earlier, was to compare what we as human beings, the transcendent that we have imagined and developed over centuries.
So the wrong conversation is, are these claims that are part of the Judeo-Christian tradition true? The right conversation is, how does the concept or the story of the transcendent that has developed in the Judeo-Christian tradition match up against other concepts or other stories? And here it sounds like she's thinking in purely practical, pragmatic terms. What does this view lead to? What does that view lead to? So which view is better? Now, I think we can have both conversations. I think we can discuss whether various claims are true while also discussing what these claims lead to. And having both conversations leads to a further conversation, namely, how does our realization that a certain story produces far better results affect our view of whether that story is true? But let's see where Ayaan is going with this.
And so now I can say I am proudly of the Judeo-Christian religion.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali, an ex-Muslim who has spent many years as a devout atheist, now identifies as a member of the Judeo-Christian religion.
Without having to waste your time about, do I really think that the world was built in 6 days? Do I really believe every word in the Bible? No. But I do believe that that's Judeo-Christian tradition, and what it has brought forth is, those are the values that I aspire to, the values by which I live.
So, without believing that certain propositions within the Judeo-Christian tradition are true, she nevertheless realizes that she's part of the tradition and that she wants to be part of the tradition. Not exactly someone Christians would recognize as a fellow follower of Jesus Christ, but in a way she is. In a way she is following Jesus. And we can at least appreciate the change in such a short amount of time from Christianity is terrible for the world and needs to be replaced by atheism to pump your brakes, everyone. Turns out we may need Christianity way more than we thought.
I was called a Christian by Roger Scruton in 2008, and I said, Roger, no, I'm not a Christian. And he said, but you act like a Christian, and you behave like a Christian, therefore you are a Christian.
She was living like a Christian even when she despised Christianity. And she's not the only one.
And I think that's exactly what I would like to say to Richard Dawkins. It's, you act like, I've been to, choral music with him, which he enjoys very much. And he's one of the most Christian people I know.
Richard Dawkins is one of the most Christian people Ayaan knows. What does she mean by this? Dawkins doesn't even believe in God. What does she mean? She means that Dawkins has been massively influenced by Christianity and that he's living according to Christian values that he absorbed from a Christian culture, even though he uses the values that he absorbed from a Christian culture to condemn and mock the source of these values. The leaders of the new atheism, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, they rose to prominence in the ivoriest of all ivory towers. They looked at themselves in their glorious tower and said, hey, we're very nice people. We're champions of virtue. We love science. We're not killing each other over disagreements. Why are we so amazing? Then they looked at the rest of the world and said, check out all these savages. Why are they so different from us? Why are they so dumb? Why are they blowing each other up? Oh, it must be because these other people are religious. So, if we just get rid of religion, everyone will be like us. That was one of the most insanely idiotic and delusional conclusions in the history of humanity, and it came from people who regard themselves as pillars of rationality. Fortunately, like all scientifically minded men, they put together an experiment. Just start replacing Christianity with atheism, and the entire world will be able to observe society becoming more and more rational, more and more logical, more and more scientific, more and more ethical. That's what will happen if we start removing Christianity. And we all know what actually happened. The moment people started turning away from Christianity, the entire world started going completely insane. So, the grand experiment of the new atheists, which they thought would confirm atheism and lead to an atheist utopia, did the exact opposite. Now, if our atheist friends are really as scientifically minded as they claim, how should they react as their theories are being debunked as surely as alchemy and spontaneous generation and phlogiston and phrenology and a static universe? Will they abandon their discredited and debunked position, as Ayaan and many others are doing? Or will they cling to the atheist delusion by 100% uncut, unadulterated, grade A, blind faith?